The Americas are home to various widely consumed and significant commercial food plants. Some naturally occur both in the Americas and on other continents, while others are endemic, which means they are found only in the Americas. Regardless of when or where they were initially used as food, all native food plants in the Americas are endemic. See New World crops for a list of food plants and other crops that were only brought to Old World cultures due to the Columbian Exchange, which was sparked by Christopher Columbus's arrival in 1492. Maize, a tall, robust grass that yields cereal grain. Maize is also referred to as corn in North American English. About 9,000 years ago, indigenous peoples in southern Mexico domesticated it from wild teosinte. In the Three Sisters polyculture, Native Americans planted it with squash and beans. The plant's leafy stalk produces female inflorescences, known as ears, and male inflorescences called tassels that produce pollen. Grain, also referred to as kernels or seeds, is produced by the ears. These are typically white or yellow in contemporary commercial varieties, though other types can have a wide range of colors. For maize to spread, human intervention is necessary. In contrast to domesticated maize, the kernels of its naturally propagating teosinte ancestor fall off the cob on their own. About 9,000 years ago, a single domestication in southern Mexico gave rise to all maize. The highland varieties of maize from Mexico are the oldest still in existence. There were two main routes by which maize traveled from this area to the lowlands and across the Americas. The valley of the Balsas River in south-central Mexico was probably the center of domestication. At least 8,000 years ago, maize made its way to highland Ecuador. By 7,600 years ago, it had spread to lower Central America, and between 700 and 600 years ago, it reached the Colombian Andes valleys. One tiny ear was produced by each of the first maize plants. Throughout Mesoamerica, the Olmec and Maya people grew a wide variety of maize, which they then ground, cooked, and nixtamalized. By 3,000 years ago, the Olmec calendar, language, and mythology were all heavily reliant on maize. In pre-Hispanic times, the Mapuche people of south-central Chile grew maize in addition to potatoes and quinoa. Maize was likely brought across the Andes from Chile and traded and transported as far south as 40 degrees south in Melanquina, Lácar Department, Argentina, prior to the Inca Empire's expansion. Spanish settlers ate maize after Europeans arrived in 1492, and traders and explorers brought it back to Europe. Wheat bread was far more popular among Spanish settlers than maize bread. Since only wheat, according to Christian doctrine at the time, could undergo transubstantiation and become the body of Christ, maize flour could not be used in place of wheat for communion bread. The ability of maize to grow in a variety of climates allowed it to spread throughout the rest of the world. Only a few decades after Columbus's explorations, it was first grown in Spain before spreading to Italy, West Africa, and other places. It was a popular Southern European peasant dish by the 17th century. It was the staple diet of the peasantry in southern France and Italy by the 18th century, particularly in Italy as polenta. The productivity of maize made it a welcome addition to Western farming systems. But as soon as it became a staple food, malnutrition became a major issue everywhere. Since at least 1200 to 1500 BC, indigenous Americans had developed the technique of nixtamalization, which involves soaking maize in alkali water made with ashes and lime. In addition to removing the corn hulls, they also removed the B vitamin niacin, which is what causes pellagra. In the developed world, pellagra vanished as soon as alkali processing and dietary diversity were recognized and implemented. Its decline has been aided by the creation of high-lysine maize and the encouragement of a more well-rounded diet. People who live on donated maize in refugee camps and food-poor areas still have pellagra. The pineapple, the most economically important plant in the Bromeliaceae family, is a tropical plant that bears edible fruit. Originating in South America, the pineapple has been grown there for many centuries. The pineapple plant became a major cultural symbol of luxury when it was brought to Europe in the 17th century. Pineapple has been farmed commercially in greenhouses and on numerous tropical plantations since the 1820s. Pineapples are small shrubs with multiple fruits formed by the fusion of the unpollinated plant's individual flowers. The plant usually grows from a side shoot or the offset that is created at the top of the fruit, and it usually reaches maturity in a year. André Thevet's 1568 translation of the New Found World, or Antarctique from French, referred to a hoiriri, a fruit that was grown and consumed by the Tupinamba people, who lived close to present-day Rio de Janeiro, and is now thought to be a pineapple. This was the first time the pineapple fruit was mentioned in English. The same fruit is later described as a nana made in the manner of a pineapple in the same English translation, using another Tupi word, nanas, which means excellent fruit. Numerous European languages adopted this usage, which resulted in the scientific binomial Ananas comosus, where comosus, which means tufted, refers to the plant stem. Purchas, who wrote in English in 1613, called the fruit ananas, but Mandeville, who wrote in 1714, is the first English writer to use the word pineapple in the Oxford English Dictionary. The Parana, Paraguay river drainages between southern Brazil and Paraguay are the source of the wild plant. Although little is known about how it was domesticated, it became a widely grown crop in South America. Its cultivation by the Mayas and Aztecs dates back to 200 BC to 700 AD, 2200 to 1300 BP in Mexico, and 1200 to 800 BC, 3200 to 2800 BP in Peru, according to archaeological evidence. Cropped pineapple was a staple food of Native Americans and widely available by the late 1400s. Christopher Columbus saw pineapples for the first time in Europe on November 4, 1493, in Guadeloupe. By 1550, the Portuguese had brought the fruit to India from Brazil. The Spanish brought the red Spanish cultivar to the Philippines from Latin America, where it was grown to yield piña fibers that were used to make textiles dating back at least to the 17th century. It was named Piña de Ins, meaning pine of the Indians, when Columbus brought it back to Spain. The pineapple was first illustrated in Oviedo's Historia General de las Indias, 1535, and it was mentioned in Peter Martyr's Decades of the New World, 1516, and Antonio Pigafetta's Relazione del Primo Viaggio intorno al Mondo, 1524 to 1525. As a colonial fruit, the pineapple captivated Europeans, but it wasn't until Peter de la Corte, 1664 to 1739, established greenhouse horticulture close to Leiden that it was successfully grown in Europe. 25 English and French gardeners received pineapple plants from the Netherlands in 1719 and 1730, respectively. The first pineapple was cultivated in England at Dorney Court in Dorney, Buckinghamshire, and in 1723 the Chelsea Physic Garden constructed a massive pineapple stove to heat the plants. A pineapple grown at Versailles in 1733 was presented to King Louis XV of France. 20 pineapple saplings were taken from St. Petersburg to a greenhouse at Empress Anna's New Moscow Palace in 1730 after Peter the Great brought de la Corte's technique to Russia in the 1720s. A legume crop primarily grown for its edible seeds, the peanut Arachis hypogea, is also referred to as the groundnut, goober US, goober pea pinder US, or monkey nut UK. Both small and large commercial producers cultivate it extensively as an oil crop and as a grain legume in the tropics and subtropics. Because peanut pods grow underground, which is unusual for legumes, botanist Carl Linnaeus gave them the name hypogea, which translates to under the earth. East of the Andes, in the region of Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil, is where the Arachis genus is indigenous. Two wild peanut species, believed to be A. duranensis and A. ipensis, hybridized to produce the cultivated peanut, A. hypogea. The original hybrid, known as an amphidiploid or allotetraploid, would have been sterile, but spontaneous chromosome doubling made it fertile again. According to genetic analysis, the hybridization may have only happened once and produced A. Monticola, a wild peanut that grows in a few restricted areas in northwest Argentina or southeastern Bolivia, where the landraces of peanuts with the most wild-like characteristics are currently cultivated, as well as A. hypogea through artificial selection. A. hypogea differs significantly from its wild relatives due to the process of domestication through artificial selection. The domesticated plants have larger seeds, a different pod structure, and are bushier and more compact. Cultivation expanded from this primary center of origin to create secondary and tertiary centers of diversity in Uruguay, Brazil, Paraguay, Ecuador, and Peru. According to the Peanut Scientific Classification Table, thousands of peanut landraces have evolved over time and are divided into 2 subspecies and 6 botanical varieties. Types of A. H. fastigiata subspecies grow more uprightly and have shorter crop cycles. Types of A. H. Hypogea subspecies have longer crop cycles and spread out more on the ground. According to archaeological findings, the earliest known pod remains date back approximately 7,600 years, suggesting that they may have been cultivated wild species or early domesticated A. Hypogea. They were discovered in Peru, a country with a dry climate that is ideal for preserving organic matter. In the center of origin, where the climate is moister, peanut cultivation most likely predates this. Peanuts were portrayed in the artwork of many pre-Columbian cultures, including the Moche. Before the arrival of the Spanish, cultivation was well established in Mesoamerica. There, the conquistadors discovered the plant's Nahuatl name, Tlacacahuatl, which is why it is called cacahuate in Spanish, being sold in Tenochtitlan's marketplace. Spain, especially Valencia, brought its cultivation to Europe in the 19th century, and it is still produced there, albeit in small quantities. The peanut was later introduced to other countries by European traders, and it is currently grown extensively in tropical and subtropical areas. It significantly supplanted the Bambara groundnut, a crop plant from the same family, whose seed pods also grow underground in West Africa. It became a staple of Asian agriculture, and Asia is currently the world's largest producer. A staple food in many parts of the world, potatoes are starchy, tuberous vegetables that are indigenous to the Americas. The plant Solanum tuberosum, a perennial in the Solanaceae family of nightshades, produces potatoes as underground tubers. There are wild potato species from southern Chile to the southern United States. According to genetic research, the cultivated potato originated in the region that is now southern Peru and extreme northwest Bolivia. About 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, a species belonging to the S. brevical complex domesticated potatoes there. The potato is a native of the Andes region of South America, where many varieties are grown. In the latter part of the 16th century, potatoes were brought to Europe from the Americas by the Spanish. They are an essential component of a large portion of the global food supply and a staple food in many regions of the world. The number of potato varieties has increased to over 5,000 after millennia of selective breeding. The potato is still a staple crop in Europe, particularly in Northern and Eastern Europe, where production per capita is still the highest in the world. In contrast, production in Southern and Eastern Asia expanded at the fastest rate in the 21st century, with China and India leading the world in production as of 2021. The potato belongs to the genus Solanum, which also includes nightshades and tomatoes. The toxin solanine is found in the potato's aerial parts. When properly grown and stored, normal potato tubers produce very small amounts of glycoalkaloids. However, if sprouts and potato skins are exposed to light, the tubers may become toxic. There are wild potato species from southern Chile to the southern United States. Pre-Columbian farmers around Lake Titicaca were the first to domesticate the potato in southern Peru and northwest Bolivia. About 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, a species belonging to the S. brevical complex domesticated potatoes there. At the coastal site of Ancon, central Peru, the oldest archaeologically confirmed potato tuber remains date to 2500 BC. Since before the Spanish conquest, the indigenous people of the Chiloé archipelago have been cultivating Solanum tuberosum, the most widely grown variety. Disperse. As part of the Columbian exchange, the Spanish brought the potato to Europe in the second half of the 16th century after conquering the Inca Empire. The staple was later transported to ports and territories around the world, particularly their colonies, by European mariners, perhaps including the Russian-American Company. Potato farming was adopted slowly by European and colonial farmers, but after 1750, they emerged as a significant field crop and food staple, contributing significantly to the population explosion of the 19th century in Europe. A quarter of the Old World's population growth and urbanization between 1700 and 1900 is thought to have been caused by the introduction of the potato. However, the crop was susceptible to disease because of the lack of genetic diversity brought about by the extremely small number of varieties that were first introduced. The fungus-like Oomycete Phytophthora infestans is the cause of late blight, a plant disease that spread quickly through the poorer areas of Western Ireland and parts of the Scottish Highlands in 1845. This caused crop failures that ultimately led to the Great Irish Famine. The majority of the 4,870 varieties of potato germplasm kept at the International Potato Center, located in Lima, Peru, are traditional landrace cultivars. With 12 chromosomes and 860 million base pairs, the potato genome is a medium-sized plant genome, according to a 2009 draft sequence. It had been thought that most potato cultivars derived from a single origin in southern Peru and extreme northwestern Bolivia, from a species in the S. brevicol complex. DNA analysis, however, shows that more than 99% of all current varieties of potatoes are direct descendants of a subspecies that once grew in the lowlands of south-central Chile. Most modern potatoes grown in North America arrived through European settlement and not independently from the South American sources. At least one wild potato species, S. fendleri, occurs in North America. It is used in breeding for resistance to a nematode species that attacks cultivated potatoes. A secondary center of genetic variability of the potato is Mexico, where important wild species that have been used extensively in modern breeding are found, such as the hexaploid S. demissum, used as a source of resistance to the devastating late blight disease, Phytophthora infestans.